Okay, good. I think it's still considered morning. Welcome to the
second, Elaine. One
We'll
second.
start again. Okay, Tammy?
Folks are still coming in, so maybe we wait just about 10, 15 more seconds. Let folks.
Why don't you just give me a thumbs up when it's time?
Sure, will do. Elaine, it's your show.
Okay, so good morning-ish. Welcome to the Special Education Information Session. I'm Elaine Semple. I'm the Director of Special Ed for the Torrance School District. Also in attendance on the panel today are board members Betty Liu and Jeremy Gerson, and our Chief Academic Officer, Dr. Katie Crumpy. I'm going to have the Special Education Department participants introduce themselves so that if you have additional questions after this webinar, you will know who to contact. So we'll start off with Melinda.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Melinda Smith. I'm the Director of Compliance for Special Education.
Teresa.
Hi, I'm Teresa Lanfear, Principal of Launch Preschool, our special ed program for young students.
Kumi.
Kumi Smart, Coordinator of Special Education. I handle most of the special education programs for the South and Central area and Victor Elementary School. I handle ABA, the ABA programs and OT, PT, and Assist and APE.
Debbie.
Hi, good morning. I'm Debbie Mabry, Special Education Coordinator. As with Kumi, I support the other half of the elementary campuses, as well as non-public school, transportation, and speech and language pathologist.
Not present today is Erin Lahr, and she is the Special Education Coordinator for high school, middle school, and adult transition. Then we have Ian.
Ian McCullen, Middle School Program Specialist.
Rudy.
Rudy DeLena, Program Specialist for the high school and transition programs.
Okay. Fiona.
Good morning, I'm Fiona Meyer. I am a Program Specialist for the North and West Elementary Schools.
Michelle.
I'm Michelle Amundsen. I'm the Program Specialist for Torrance Elementary, Walteria, Hickory, Fern, Seaside, Anza, and Home Instruction.
Okay, now it gets a little confusing. Allie.
Hi, I'm Allie Bader. I'm currently covering for Crystal Alcala as Assistant Principal for Regional Programs.
Jessica.
Hi everyone, Jessica Gabriel, Program Specialist covering for Allie Bader for elementary schools.
Okay. I'm going to go through really quickly what our agenda is today. We do have, we will be stopping at noon. So please allow us to go through our presentation first. Questions will be taken at the end of the presentation. Use the raise hand icon and you'll be unmuted by the host. Please be sure to limit your question to one question. In terms of our norms, please ask questions that are not specific to your child's IEP or give any personally identifiable information regarding your child. If you have individual questions about your child specific to their IEP and their needs, contact the appropriate program specialist or coordinator. So questions today are to inform the process and for everyone. And with that, I'm going to get started. Tammy, you want to share the presentation if you would? Okay, I'm going to get onto mine. So the basics, for all of our students with special needs, you will need to select distance by the deadline, which is 5 o'clock today. You will need to either select a distance learning only or the blended learning model. If you don't get on and select one of them, then you'll be automatically placed in the blended learning model. Right now, all TUSD students will begin in a virtual format. Your selection will not change once we can safely begin to return to school in stages. So what that means is that right now, what you're selecting is once we can return to school, you'll either be in a distance learning only or in the blended learning. But right now, everybody, general education, special education, will be in the distance learning format. Okay. Next slide. So what does the blended learning format look like for students with IEPs? There are a couple different models. For the elementary students, TK through grade 5, who are served in general education with Learning Center and SAI support, the model will follow the elementary AM/PM model that's in the guide that you were given by Dr. Crumpy and the district last week. The related services for students in that blended learning model will be provided via a distance learning format to the greatest extent possible to maximize contact with general education instruction. So students will be in with their general education teacher when they're in person at school, and then related services will be provided via a distance format. Next slide. For students in middle school and high school, grades 6 through 12, and transition students, but actually the 6 through 12 are served in general education with Learning Center and SAI support. You'll participate in that AM/PM model, so you'll be in a cohort, your student will be in a cohort of Monday, Thursday, Tuesday, Friday. I forgot to mention for the AM/PM students, the Wednesday asynchronous, as it stands right now, will be applied to that model as well. And then that will also be available to the students in the AB model. For those students, also related services will be provided via distance format to the greatest extent possible, so that those students, when they're on campus meeting with their teachers, they're not being pulled out. This is to the greatest extent possible. Individual circumstances and individual IEPs will provide for, there'll be some flexibility for those students. Next slide. So for our students who receive their instruction in self-contained, multi-grade or structured special day classes, so for students who are in ABA programs or in our STEPS classes, including preschool, these students will be in a blended program, but they'll attend school in person 4 days a week, and then will be instructed asynchronously on the day that all the other students receive instruction offsite. For these students, the related services or their DIS services will be provided when the students are on campus. But for student safety, they may still be virtual with para-ed support. So we are working with our DIS providers. For some students, they may be working with the paraeducator in a smaller environment, and the related service provider may be working with them while they are on Chromebooks. This is to ensure that we can safely distance. Some students may be working directly with their service providers. Next slide. For students with IEPs who elect to remain at home in the distance only format, they'll receive daily contact 4 days a week. They will have the asynchronous instruction on the same day as all the other students. They'll be provided with their DIS minutes and a full program in a distance learning format. Their hours of instruction will be the same as students without IEPs. and we will mirror their IEPs to the greatest extent possible in that distance format. Next slide. I'm going to get on mine so I can see it bigger because I don't have my glasses on. For students in the SDC blended programs, the teachers at the individual sites are going to work with the site administrators and the program specialists. And based on the number of students electing to return full-time, they'll design their instructional programs. So the instructional programs may have all the students in the classroom with the teacher and the paraeducators all day, or the students may be broken up into smaller cohorts and instructed in a AM, PM kind of model at the school site. They will still be on site all day, but schedules will be created to keep students in smaller groups. Group DIS services will be provided to students within the same class or cohort. They won't be mixed. Students in all the blended programs will have the same asynchronous district-wide day and minutes of instruction as general education students, and students in both blended and distance learning will be offered the services on their IEP. We will be continuing to work on goals and objectives. We will continue to collect data, and we will continue to report progress on the same time frame that we do when we're in a typical school year. Next slide. IEPs will continue to be held via a distance format. If a family cannot access the internet or a computer at home in order to participate in their IEP, the school will work to provide a safe setting at the school for the parent to attend the meeting with the appropriate technology, adhering to mask and safety guidelines. Team members may still be attending via the virtual platform. Okay, that is the presentation. So we are ready for questions.
So I think we only have one hand raised. I will unmute you.
I'm pretty thorough, I guess.
I know. So we have a few now. Okay, so Valerie, I'm about to unmute you. There you go, Valerie. Go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah, well, I really do have a couple, but I feel like I have heard from many special ed parents, and the distance learning, they're having problems with their child online. As my son goes to a different tab, and I think Dr. Crumpy had said about, well, that's when their face isn't shown. Well, no, my son has his face shown, but is going to another tab and playing a game or whatever. So I don't know how to address this, because I know it's not just my child doing it.
So the question, let me rephrase the question, is, are you asking, is there a way for us to help you do something with the technology at home that when he's at school, he's only supposed to be at school, he's only able to access school things? I don't think that.
Yeah, is that possible? Is that possible?
Okay, that's not a special education question though. We would have to talk to IT or someone about that, because that's out of my knowledge base. I'm really not that techie, but that's definitely something, to look into. That wouldn't be something that I, as special ed, would be able to answer. But I agree, a lot of people probably are facing that same challenge.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, Valerie, thank you for your question. I'm going to move on to the next person. Okay. Kim will be the next person.
Hi.
Hi.
So this question is for my sister who cannot attend the meeting, but I asked a question, for her. So my question is, for first time IEP to do the evaluation, comprehensive evaluation, is it still be done? And how is gonna be done, like in person or virtual? Because I don't know like how many questions or what type of question will have to be asked to the student, or do you need to see student face reaction when they answer the question or some stuff like that. And then if it's done by like physical or in person, then if the student opt to do distant learning, then they can still go to school to do the test, and then do distant learning after the IEP is enforced.
So I'm going to rephrase your question. I think what you're asking is for students who are being assessed for an initial IEP right now, how are we going to conduct the assessment? Is it going to be in person or not? And then should the student qualify, can they elect to participate in distance learning and receive their IEP services in that format, and then transition to full-time attendance when we return to normal? Is that correct?
Yeah, so actually right now, I my sister opted for distant learning.
Yeah.
Okay. But, yeah, things might change after, the result.
So, well, to speak to that though, if she opted for distance learning right now, even if let's say the assessment results in the student becoming eligible for special education services, we would have to look at availability at the school sites for kids who are switching from a distance format to a blended. But definitely, if the child was eligible for special education services after that initial assessment and an IEP was developed, those services and goals and objectives would be addressed regardless of whether the student was in a distance format or in a blended program at school. How those assessments are going to be conducted, there's actually a task force working on that through the SELPA, and then also we're working actually with some people through the university and the state to try and figure out what kinds of instruments we can use safely or actually appropriately in a distance format. If it's necessary for students to be assessed in person and we can do it in a safe manner and the guidelines from the Department of Public Health allow it, there will be some in-person assessment, but to the extent possible, the assessments will be continue to be conducted via distance format. So interviews, rating scales, things like that. Hopefully answered your question.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Okay. Our next speaker will be Julietta Nones. Julietta.
Hi, good morning. I have opted for distance learning for my son who is in middle school, but I'm still curious about for blended learning. How many kids would be in one classroom when it happens?
It would be no different for a student with, if your child is in a middle school classroom, general education classroom, the number of students would be no different if there were students with IEPs in the classroom. The number of students that can be in the classroom, that's determined by general education. And Dr. Crumpy has that information. And I think that was in the guidelines that were disseminated last week.
Yeah, I remember like for general education, they will, like for typical kids, they said there will be like 16 kids in one classroom. I was just curious about for special education for middle school.
So maybe I'll just check if that's okay, Elaine. So right now, because on Friday, the governor has ordered that Los Angeles County schools cannot reopen at this time. Both models, distance learning and blended learning that will now be at home, will be identical. And so in an elementary classroom, the rosters are 27 students for every one teacher. And so it doesn't matter which model you choose, the class sizes are the same. The difference is when we return to school, in the event that if and when we can return to school safely, the blended learning model, to maintain the physical distancing that are part of our requirements from the Department of Public Health, that we have to keep kids 6 feet apart, that's when there would be that 16 number that you hear about, that would be at school at a time with a teacher. The teacher still will have 27 kids in K-5 or 35 kids in 6-12. It's just how they're divided up. They're still responsible for their full teaching assignment.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, the other thing is for our students in the self-contained special day classes, ABA steps, we are doing our best to keep those classes and groupings as small as we can to safely distance. So we are looking at individual student needs and classroom needs, because some of those classrooms have equipment needs and a lot of adults. So we may be putting different limits on different classrooms depending on the needs of the students. But this is for our students with higher levels of need in the smaller self-contained classes.
Thank you.
There are some questions in the Q&A. I'll read those off at the end once we've finished the raised hands. Okay, the next speaker will be Lindsay Richards.
Are in both Gen Ed and ABA learning classes, are they going to be required to log on to both classrooms? And if they have a one-to-one aid, and to support them this time around?
I only got part of your question. Would you mind repeating it? I'm sorry.
So for the kids that are both special day or ABA Learning Center students and Gen Ed, are they going to be required to log on to both classes? And if they have a one-to-one aid in their IEP, how are you going to support them? Because you can't sit with him for every session. You know, I work as well, and I have a baby at home, so it proved to be very difficult last time.
Yeah, so if your student returns to school in the blended program and has additional adult support in the classroom, while your child is at school, that additional adult support will be provided. If your child's at home, all supports and services will be provided in a distance format, but that paraeducator will still be available to work with your child via distance, just as they are typically. And if the distance program for your child involves them logging on to Google Classroom, then yes, the expectation would be that your child would participate in the classroom. Now, if your kiddo's having a really, really hard time with that, that's something to talk to the IEP team about, so that we can work with you in developing a behavioral program for increasing your child's ability to participate. So a reinforcement schedule for an ABA child. Working with the assist and the classroom teacher in figuring out how long a session your child can participate in, and then developing the program so that we maximize the time that your child's able to participate, and perhaps chunk it throughout the day. That's going to be something that the individual teachers and service providers will work with individual families to improve the child's ability to participate and to craft a program that works better for your kiddo.
So are we supposed to be sending these emails to the teachers now, or the program specialist, or, because I know
Well,
going into a brand new classroom with a teacher he's never met before online is not going to work.
Yeah. The teachers aren't working right now. So to send your concerns to the program specialist is a good idea, so that we have a heads up for that teacher when we start in August, so that the team is already alerted to the fact that your child is struggling with the distance learning format, and starts working with you and the team members to increase compliance and to facilitate your child's access to that platform. We have, over time, that when we went onto this distance thing, really quickly, it was really difficult, and it continues to be really difficult, no question there. But we have increased our toolkit a little bit for ways and tricks to help kids to participate online. So it would be a good idea to alert the team to that, so that we can have some sort of meeting, virtual meeting like this, to talk about what are some things we can do to
okay, thank you.
help your kiddo.
Next up is Brandy Johnson.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes.
Hi. Thank you. Thank you for holding this. I really appreciate that response and having this opportunity to talk to you all in a somewhat private conversation. I'm having a really hard time thinking about limiting my questions for something like this to just one. So if you don't mind, just give me a moment. I want to make sure that I'm picking the most important one for us. I think, and you've touched on this a bit, and I know, nobody has all the answers. Of course, we are all in this together. But the plans for children who have a level of support needed, where the offering right now with the distance learning, we've experienced it for the last 3 months, where we are looking down the barrel of doing this again for another year. When it doesn't work, my main concern as a parent, beyond the fact that my child is not able to access the curriculum at this time for several reasons, but I think my most important thing is it's the one-to-one support. I keep hearing you talk about paras being virtual, and we've experienced this, and I have absolutely no complaints about anybody that we worked with. You guys got to know you have a great team, right? So I have no complaint about that, but it's not enough, when my kid can just walk away. And the other thing is, we already have programs in place at home that are established that have been thrown into turmoil and flummox because of all of these additional obligations. So we're really struggling. I'm sure that a lot of parents are in the same boat. I'm definitely hearing that personally. So I guess what I'm looking for is engagement from the district. I would hope that there'd be some lessons that you guys have learned from your effective co-educators for the last 3 months, and I'd like to hear a little bit about that.
So your question is are we providing additional teacher training to engage students who elect to remain on a distance format but that are struggling to participate?
Either if the distance is by choice or if the distance is by decree, which is where we are right now.
Right. So because once we, you know, if you elect a blended program, then your child will have that opportunity to have that in person and, you know, more engaging environment at school once we can safely do that. But yes, we continue to train teachers and talk to teachers about student engagement. For our kids with special needs, that's why they have an individualized education plan, because there is no one size fits all program for them. So it is really important to be specific in your communications with your special education teacher and your service providers about the times of day that your child is not able to participate, the kinds of triggers that make it difficult for your child to participate. I had one parent share that when, you know, that when the computer, when it freezes, they lose their student. So we asked the team to provide a social story for that particular child, so that when they're prepared, so that they know what to do when the computer freezes. So if we have specifics for what your child's needs are, then we can address them individually. But we have been providing ongoing training, ongoing support. The program specialists right here, quite a few of them have just recently been participating with staff in different ways and for students to engage in the curriculum.
But do you have plans to assist your co-educators, being the parents that are here, that are your hands and your follow through for these Zoom meetings? You know, kids learn very quickly that your follow through is not what it would be in person. They can just simply walk away, and it's like 4 hours of that.
You're asking, are we providing trainings to parents for working with their students at home? We can do that individually. We haven't had an overall training for parents, or haven't that, but that's not a bad idea at all. That's actually a really good idea for parents with their students with special needs. What are some things that you can do?
Yeah. Another thing that I would suggest, I'm sorry, I don't want to take too much time. We got to move on.
That's actually a really good idea.
Miss Johnson,
yes.
This is Kumi Smart.
Hi.
And I'm very active with professional development. And if you'd like to have a private conversation with me, and we can collaborate on how we can best meet the needs of, you know, parents as co-educators in this distance format, I'd love the opportunity to work with you on developing something that is relevant, right? Because I have perceived, you know, different issues in the distance format for our students with disabilities, but I absolutely would love your input and, you know, a couple parents' input on how we can best meet the needs of all of our Torrance students. So please email me directly, and we can set up a call where we can address some of your concerns there.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. And if I could just make one more point, is I think what I'm really looking for is some positive stories. I'd like to hear from people that this actually worked, and see if there's any information that I can glean that maybe it's something that we haven't considered personally for our child. I would find that really helpful. That's kind of why I asked for this in the first place. So thank
Jessica,
you.
You had said that some of the things that you had one student that you guys kind of worked through this, and we were talking about it the other day. Did you want to share?
Right, so it was really just about working with the family and figuring out, just like what Dr. Semple was saying, what the triggers were, what the new baseline is, because now that they're at home, you know, there's new behaviors that we're experiencing, new levels of engagement that we have to bring up to the level we need the kids to be at. So it's really working at their current baseline and figuring out what reinforcers we can bring in, and working with the team on how we can incorporate that. So, and it ended up working out with some of our kiddos, trial and error. It's just like they'd be in school, figuring out how to keep the kids progressing. That's kind of the approach we took.
And Brandy, we have had a couple of things. So we learned in this process, we learned that when talking to parents, we were finding out that parents were having their kiddos jump, they would get out of bed and then they would sit in front of the computer and they might still be in their jammies. And for our kids with special needs, that morning routine is pretty important. So we continue to have parents get their kids up at the regular time, change into school clothes, pack their little backpacks, pack their little lunch. And some kids, we have the parents walk them around the block and then sit at a table. Maybe there was a picture of their teacher there. We had, I had one parent that I suggested that they put, because the bus was a SD for that student that that school was starting. So I suggested that they have a picture of the bus, and the student took the picture of the bus and did the little walk with the picture of the bus. And then, and in the beginning it was upsetting because the student thought that that meant the bus was coming, but then it became kind of the new normal. Oh, the bus means that school starts. So we have had some success in reworking this with our students that have, that are really challenged by the distance format. But I do think sharing those ideas as a parent community and giving you guys some of the strategies that we've come up with as we've muddled through this would probably be, then we're not reinventing the wheel for each individual family. I think that's a really good idea. Thank you.
Okay, next up is, thank you, Brandy. Next up is Julie Croft.
Hello.
Hi, Julie.
Hi. One of my questions is basically, I mean, I get everything is good in paper and stuff like that with this whole blended learning. But when we actually send our child to school and say we still feel kind of uncomfortable of the circumstances or situations, is there a way to then decide to go distant learning or vice versa?
Dr. Duffy, do you want to answer that one? I can, because that's district-wide as opposed to just special education.
So the answer is you need to pick what's right for and how you're feeling comfortable. We cannot promise that we can move kids between distance learning and blended learning. We talked about class size and and teacher load earlier, and especially in some of our special ed classrooms where we have even smaller class sizes for our students, we can't promise that you move back and forth. So we're asking you to make a decision about what is your comfort level, whether when it is safe to return to school, whether you still want to remain home, then please choose blended distance learning. And if we are allowed to reopen school and you are comfortable with that, knowing that we will follow all of the health and safety guidelines that are established by both the California Department of Public Health and the Los Angeles County of Public Health, then please choose blended. And I know I'm sorry I can't give you a more definitive answer, but we can't overload a class, and we're trying to have the continuity of learning continue as much as possible and not be disruptive and have to reshuffle all kids who have gotten very comfortable with their instructors and then move them to different ones so we can we can redo the schedule in the middle of the year.
I understand that. It's just, for me, it's a little bit difficult trying to make this decision based on what you guys are saying as far as paper-wise is concerned versus when I actually get to see how this actual thing is going to be set up. Distant learning has not been very easy for me. My child is a visually impaired child, and she's been doing, as best as she can. But I mean, it's just to the point where, like, I would obviously want her to go back to school if it was safe to do so. But I don't understand, like, are they going to be wearing masks 24/7? What the guidelines are when it gets that close.
Well, I really, Julie, we understand. We're right there with you. We can only share the information as we know it. And if we were going to reopen school today, masks are required. That's part of our orders. I don't anticipate that going away. But we will follow those orders. But if we were planning on returning up until the governor's order and last Friday, and then following the rise in cases in LA County, we know that we were preparing for students to sit and be physically distanced from each other at 6 feet apart, and would be wearing masks, while they were in school. And so assuming that those guidelines remain unchanged, as LA County might come off I'm calling it the bad list, but what we heard from the governor was that LA County has many, I think there were 7 different qualifiers that we would have to all meet to be off the bad list. We have to be off of that watch list 14 days in a row before we could consider reopening. They seem pretty stringent, and then I would assume that then we would be able to consider reopening based on the health orders that we have, which would require the sanitation and the cleaning and the disinfecting and the social distancing or physical distancing and the masks.
Okay, and my last question, I know that it's just a bit much for me to go through, is if I were to able to be choosing the distant learning, would they be offering like additional tutoring given her situation, being a visually impaired child and stuff like that? I mean, would there be additional services still there for her, or it would be whatever's listed in the IEP?
Melinda?
Well, that would be something that you would want to hold an IEP team meeting to determine if, based on the distance learning, that she required some additional supports or some accommodations or modifications that maybe aren't currently part of the IEP. But initially, it would be the services that are currently in the IEP until the team convened to determine if she required some additional support.
Okay, so just amended type of IEP if needed.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh. Okay, Julie, thank you. Our next parent is Kim Sun.
Well, that's cute.
Kim, can you please unmute yourself?
Okay, sorry, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I just wanted to clarify, earlier in the presentation, it was said that for a student in a blended model in the Gen Ed class, that their services, if they have IEP services, are going to be provided via distance learning. So does that mean when they're at school in person, there's going to be no in-person IEP services provided, like either push in or pull out?
So it doesn't mean absolutely. To the extent possible, we are going to maximize the students' time with their general education teachers when they're at school. But if it's necessary for the student to have additional, if it's a student that has additional adult support, they will be assigned to a classroom that has that additional adult support if that's on their IEP. And there will be the special education teachers, if they do push in to those classrooms, they'll continue to push in to the classrooms in the blended model. It's more the pull-out services that the student receives that we will be providing in a distance format to the extent.
Okay, so it's based on how it's written in the IEP, if it's a push-in or a pull-out service.
It's based on how it's written in their IEP and how best we can provide access to education for your child. So there may be some opportunities depending on how many kids come back, more opportunities for the teachers to push in than previously. It kind of will depend on how many kids come back.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much.
The next speaker is Mary Jane Wall.
Good morning, everyone. I just want to thank you all for your extra hard work. Before I ask a question about sanitization, may I just clarify for the special day class students that would go 4 days in blended? Is it Wednesday that is not a day, or will the days change just for planning purposes?
So the Wednesday is the day that I think the district elected to be asynchronous. And so special education students will be off on the day that all the other students in the district will be off.
Right.
And I think that's Wednesday.
Okay, that's what I assumed. I just wanted to clarify. And you were saying that for if the groups are larger, they will be put into cohorts and rotated. So my question is how the areas will be sanitized between different cohorts working in a space, and who is going to be responsible for the sanitization? Because I'm in a classroom now and it's a lot of work.
Yeah. So one of the models that we are looking at is if the classes are too big, splitting the kids. So let's say it's a classroom right now of 12 and all students elect to return. We would split that class into 4 groups of 3 with an assigned consistent paraeducator. If they have individual para support, that, whatever, but this is just an idea. And then perhaps half of the students will be in that classroom receiving and in the morning with the teacher. Hopefully we will have those students, the other 6 students, in a consistent environment, and the teacher will move to the other environment where they are. So we'll be trying to access available space for that. If the students are in that classroom AM, and then they come back to their own classroom PM, we switch like that, it'll be just like we're doing with the general education students. They won't be sitting at the same desk that a student was sitting at in the morning, and will be following the sanitization protocols that the task force has developed. Hopefully that, and we'll be following the Department of Public Health sanitization guidelines. So does that answer your question?
Kind of. Will facilities workers be doing the sanitization, or will para-eds and teachers, what do you think that's going to look like in terms of the high touch surfaces that will need to be cleaned, but during the day?
Ian, you're on that committee, aren't you?
I am. No.
Thanks.
I am. You know what, Elaine, can you rephrase it? Only because I'm working the chat box right now. I'm answering those questions.
So during the day, there's concern that during the day that surfaces will need to be cleaned. And will teachers be doing that cleaning? Paraeducators, will there be cleaning of surfaces during the day in high touch areas?
There will be. I don't have any specifics as to that. But I can get that information for you though if you need it.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Rajeshwari Ramachandran.
Hi, sorry, actually.
Oops.
Muted.
Hello.
Hi.
Yeah, actually all of my questions have been answered already. So I don't have any question at this point. Whatever I want to ask, the other parents have already asked. So
great.
Thank
yeah.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So the next one is Michelle Harper.
Hi, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I had a question in regards to if my child would not wear a mask, there's no way he's going to wear it for the entire day. Does that now mean that I have to, because of the regulations, choose distance learning because he's not going to wear a mask the full day?
We're researching that because the one set of guidelines has said that all students will be required to wear masks, but we did see other guidelines that said for students that with special needs, what accommodations can we make? So we are looking at what kinds of face coverings for our kids that are have a challenge with wearing masks. We're looking at things like the shields and things like that. But we also, Michelle, have been working, so during ESY, the teachers are providing lessons to the students who are really challenged with wearing the masks. They're doing lessons on wearing masks and desensitizing them. We've got some social stories already out there, and then we're working with some of our non-public agencies to develop videos and we also are working with individual families on mask wearing, not just for school, but also so that your kiddo can be outside and can be safe and wear a mask in compliance with the Department of Public Health guidelines. So it's not just for school. We want our kids with special needs to have as full a life as you can have right now during this pandemic. So while we are trying to come up with a plan to address the needs of those students who are challenged by wearing masks, we also really do want to, more than anything, improve compliance for mask wearing, just for those kids' health and just to give them the opportunities to be out in the community.
Right. Well, he'll wear it for like going into stores, but like to wear it for the full day, I just don't see that as being an option for him right now, because as soon as he gets out of the store, he wants to take it off. So I just don't know how he's going to be able to go to a classroom and sit there for 6 hours with a mask on.
Right. So in a situation like that, that's great that he's wearing one. We can, then we'll have he can go outside and have a mask break, right? So that would be his break would be, probably if we can come up with an icon or something that he can show that, if he needs a mask break, then that would be an opportunity for him maybe to go outside distance from whoever's monitoring him, but take a break from his mask and then work at a picnic table or something like that for a little while. Yeah.
Okay. And then during this distance learning, it's been especially challenging for working parents because we're still holding full-time jobs. Is MPA services a part of his IEP? Are those going to be services that are going to still be delivered in the fall, if since we're all going to the distance learning model?
If he has a service, I don't know, Melinda, did you want to address this one or?
Is the question in relation to in-home? I don't know that we've developed, currently the district is not able to send its staff or contracted staff into homes due to the stay-at-home order, but I'm not certain if there's how that would look for the fall, assuming there was opportunities to go back to school.
Yeah, I mean, once he goes back, then he could get the MPA, but for now, since we're all on kind of a shutdown as far as going back, that's been especially challenging for working parents because, the moment that you get a phone call for work, then he walks away and there's like nothing, like there's no way for working parents to be able to follow through because we're also trying to keep our jobs. So I'm just trying to figure out what kind of supports can the district provide so that we can have him attend to the Zoom sessions without having to also worry about losing our jobs.
The NPAs are available via distance right now to also, though they should be, if it's on his IEP, your non-public agency, even though they're not coming into your home, should be working with you on those kinds of things, via distance.
Yeah, it's just hard because the moment when there's no follow through, it obviously it's hard when there's not a body next to him. So
absolutely, no question. This is really, really challenging, and I think it's really challenging for everybody. But I think even more so for our families who have little kids or students with special needs who require that so much adult attention and supervision. Yeah.
So at this point, if I choose distance learning, because obviously I'm not sure how this is going to play out. And then we get more control over this COVID situation. Are we able to switch at some point to the blended when it looks like it's safe?
So Dr. Crumpy answered that question just a little bit ago. If you elect for a distance, then we aren't going to be able to be jumping back and forth from blended to I mean, obviously everybody district-wide is on distance right now or on virtual right now. And then if you elected to continue to be distance when we do resume school, we won't be able to be jumping back and forth and then changing everyone's schedules. Some of it has to do with, availability, like, if a spot suddenly became open, there might be a possibility. So definitely inform people of your desire to switch, but I at this time, I don't think that there's really an option to switch back and forth.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Brooke Shimabukuro.
Hi there. So I've got 2 children that have pretty severe disabilities, so they require hand over hand basically for all the distance learnings. And is there any kind of flexibility with times that we can work? Because like I said, when we did the distance learning at the end of the year, there was things I had to cut out, and we had to do things, a lot of prep work for the parent to do to get ready. So I guess what I'm saying is we work full-time also, and my children, like I said, you can't just put the computer on in front of them because they're pretty severely handicapped. So is there flexibility to work with the teachers on times that I could work out with with work and with the teachers? Because like I said, it's just not possible to put my child in front of a computer, both of my children, and they just won't be able to learn that way. Is there flexibility, I guess, is what I'm kind of asking.
So that would be something you would work out with the individual teacher. Teachers aren't going to be, they're only going to work during school hours. So the flexibility wouldn't extend to a teacher, going online and doing synchronous instruction with your student at 4 or 5 in the afternoon.
Right.
But you can work with your teacher and your service providers during the scheduled school day for flexibility. One of the other things is if the school team is aware that the prep work is problematic for you, let them know, and we can work with you and educators do some of that prep work for you. We have some families that we did that for this time and provided and dropped the materials off or made it available for the parents to pick up those materials. So if that's a challenge for you, then that is something that we did do for some of our families.
Okay. And are you guys talking about sending when the stay-at-home orders are over? Were there talks about having therapists come or meeting? How do we meet with a therapist? That's because we've got physical therapy, occupational speech for both kids.
Right. So so right now we've been doing it via distance, and to the extent possible, we're going to continue. But if your students are kiddos, and so right now with the current orders, everything is continued distance. But if you elect the blended program and we come back to school, the OTs and the PTs will be working with the students at the school site.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay. The next speaker is, excuse me if I mispronounce this, Irania Ferguson.
Yeah, hello. Hi.
Hi, Irina.
Hi. Yeah, my biggest question is there a way, because of the fact that my daughter has autism and she's deaf, is there a way, because parents are going to be home longer with their children, is there a way for the district, because everybody's still getting paid? And I think my biggest issue is that my teacher only has 12 or 13 students and we don't have anything tangible. Like, you know, I have a master's in education. When I was a teacher, if I was a teacher right now, I would like put on some gloves and get district money to make kits for my kids ASAP. There's no way that I wouldn't have tangible stuff for a class of children with autism that's so tiny for 12 or 13 students. I'm kind of floored at the fact that parents, even from a morale standpoint, need something tangible. And I know that Torrance is capable of being creative, and that's the frustrating part. It's like, you know, Regional Center just now doing some type of giveaway. Like there's money there that everybody's still getting paid and nobody's in the classrooms working to pack up stuff for the kids and kits. And so that's my biggest issue. My teacher was supposed to drop off something this weekend. She didn't. She was supposed to mail something out. She did not. And it's embarrassing. My daughter's kindergarten teacher was, for her typical classroom, was a rock star. 29 kids on Google Hangout, and she's been teaching for 34 years. And she learned it and she nailed it. And she made them feel good, and was able to graduate. I don't even understand what's happening. So I really want something tangible for the parents. I'm not gonna relent on that, because they're getting the money, you're getting the money for each student in special education, and at least you could give them is a morale kit to care for them. So it's not a question, it's an ask of something tangible. Do a drive-by, do something that's morale boosting for these parents who are suffering. Because I'm not suffering, because I have an amazing husband and I get to stay at home and I get to order my food in and out, but there are kids at home who we don't even know what's happening to. Their parents aren't on this Zoom call. Do you understand? So I really want something tangible, and I just am very disappointed in the lack of creativity that is happening from the district. Before the school year starts, I want you to email all the SPED parents and give them something.
So give them something like
give them books, give them a backpack, give them some notebooks, give them a freaking airwave, do a drive-by, do a morale booster for these SPED parents. Typical children are getting that. They're getting that from their classroom. Our kids aren't worthy of it. Are they not human enough?
So it might be
something tangible, like a notebook, like a pencil. Like, it's not about what they need. It's about caring for the parents and saying, we see you, we appreciate you, we know you're suffering, instead of just sitting there and like, it's like, I'm just completely floored and embarrassed. As a former teacher, I am completely embarrassed. These parents are just left. You heard the mother shaking in her voice that she has to work full time, you know, and it's like nothing. Hand over hand, 2 severe special needs children. If we can't hug her, at least give her something. Already cut materials, for God's sakes. I'm just disappointed. I'm completely disappointed. I need something tangible for parents.
Well, thank you for sharing that, and I agree that it is really, really being difficult for our parents. So in terms of ideas for morale boosting and your classroom in particular, maybe that could be a conversation that we have so you can share your ideas for what the kinds of things that you think families would benefit from in terms of encouragement.
There are 30 groups at least on Facebook forming right now. They are forming, the parents are forming. If the SPED groups form, you're in trouble. I'm just really giving you some advice here to get in front of the parents who are disgruntled and suffering, and for the children at home right now who are suffering that cannot speak for themselves. Give something to the parents overall. These 13 kids, yeah, Tanya should be embarrassed. I'm sorry. I should have tangible things for my child. It doesn't make sense. We are smarter than this. I appreciate Rudy for giving us a laptop. I appreciate the kindness, but something tangible is just so common sense. Can we not partner with Hasbro Can we not partner with Mattel? Could you not give them something tangible? So yeah, I'm not gonna ask my kid's teacher to do something because when I ask her for something simple, I do not get it. And so I'm completely clearly on my own with that. My child is one of the privileged ones who's gonna always do great because that's my job. But yeah, I do want something tangible.
Okay,
There
well,
are
we'll
tons
talk.
of notebooks, tons of opportunities. So that's my thing. It's like, you know, if you can't get them anything else, arrange something. How many SPED parents are there? Can we put our heads together and do something?
Okay. All right. Thank you.
The next speaker is Shaja. It's showing up.
And we're at 12:07, Tammy.
So how about this be the last?
Yeah.
Okay. Hello. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
So my question is, for the students who select distance learning, will they be having completely different teams as compared to the, you know, the in-person, the blended students who will be going to the school, and they obviously may have like a case manager and therapists. Will those therapists and teachers be sharing the caseload between the distance learning students and the blended students?
So the teachers, they will most likely have completely separate teachers. Teachers won't be trying to teach all day in class and then provide distance. So they will have separate teachers. In terms of DI, you know, related service providers, so the special education teachers and the speech pathologists, OTs, PTs, we have to look at caseloads once we see how many parents have elected to participate in distance only and how many have decided to participate in the blending, and then we'll base the caseloads on that. We're going to work with the service providers so that we can provide quality services. So your child might have different service providers if they're in a distance format than they had previously, or that they would have had they come back to school in the blended format. Teachers will be different, doing different types of things.
Okay. Why can't they do some kind of you know, sharing? Like can they do some live streaming, or can they do Zoom sessions with the children at home who choose to be doing distance learning?
So you mean the teacher that they have right now, if you choose to do distance, the live streaming, I think, is something that the district has been addressing in the webinars that they've been holding, the overall Q&As. In terms of Zoom, if a teacher is teaching in their classroom, they then can't be doing it, you know, a distance learning Zoom at the same time. So that's why it's got to be different teachers. They can't be teaching two different formats at the same time.
I see. And for service providers, I think you mentioned that even if the kids are doing blended learning, they may be doing it over Zoom. So if they go to school, they are doing it over Zoom. So in that case, maybe they could be the same service providers
Yes.
for the distance learning students.
Yes, the service providers are advocating for that. So they're pushing hard to keep their kids and make it work. So we're trying hard to honor the fact that they feel they miss the kids. We all do. We miss them so much. Yeah, but we're trying. Yeah.
The question, because I also attended the general education, you know, question session, and it's very in that case it's very clear, because it's mentioned that the distance learning students will have a different teacher, and they will have its own, you know, they will not be attached to the classroom teachers. So that's why it's this question is coming up here, and it seems like it's also going to be a different teacher, even if you're in a special day classroom. They may have their, I don't know how many number of students they may handle, but they will have their own caseload.
Yeah, that's what it's looking like right now. Yeah. Again, it will depend on the numbers and how many kids elect to come back blended. If an entire class decides to participate in a distance format, then likely that teacher will be teaching her own kids or his own kids. So really kind of some of that's going to depend on what people's responses are today.
Thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you. Okay, so this has been recorded and it will be available. So if you know someone, we know that there were some glitches with getting the email out, and we will send out a link for the recording once it becomes available. If you know someone that was unable to participate today but wants this information, let them know that we will be sending a link to all special education, to all parents of students with special needs with the recording on it. And thank you for participating today. Thank you to our panelists and our board members and Dr. Crumpy for your participation. Really appreciate it. And stay safe, everybody. All right, thank you.